because EVV seems to be the hot topic these days, right? So we are federally mandated in the state of Georgia to implement electronic visit verification, correct?
Yes, federally, every state and territory is federally mandated to implement EVV.
And there are a couple of myths, yeah. And what's the penalty? We don't want to know.
Yeah, which is a really fair question. So Medicaid is part federal tax dollars and part state tax dollars. And so Congress mandated EVV a couple of years ago as part of the 21st Century Cures Act. And they said that if states didn't adopt an EVV system, states and territories like Puerto Rico and Guam, that they would start to get a penalty on the federal match. That portion of federal dollars that goes towards Medicaid would end up being reduced for personal care services. It starts at a 0.25 match, and it goes to 0.5, and then it goes to 0.75, and then it goes to 1% of the total FMAP. And you may be thinking, 1%, who cares, right? What's 1%? We spend hundreds of millions of dollars in personal support services and community living supports every year in the state of Georgia. Hundreds of millions of dollars. So when you start to talk about 1%, you're talking about quite a bit of money that the state of Georgia would have to find in state tax dollars.
Okay. So again, the federal government has laid it out where this is what the penalty is going to be if you do not implement. Okay.
Yeah. And just to be clear, every single state is implementing EVV. There is no state that is choosing not to implement EVV, or territory for that matter.
Okay. So there are some myths out there, and I know that you addressed this on the webinar a couple of weeks ago or a week and a half ago, whenever that was. Facial recognition and tracking, GPS tracking. So are those going to be a part of the Georgia package?
No.
No. Okay.
No. I mean, the short answer to that is no. We're not doing facial recognition. We do have a GPS locator as part of the app when the worker signs in and when the worker leaves. But at no other point is that GPS locator on. And we are not tracking anyone throughout the day. I know this is something that continues to be out there that the states are tracking. We don't have the data, the money, the time, the resources to track people. We wouldn't even know how to begin to do that. And it's not in any of our operations to do that. It's not in TELUS's operations to do that. It's not part of their system design. And so nobody across the board is planning on tracking folks throughout the day.
So TELUS is the vendor that has created the system, right?
Correct.
So for example, say you self-direct and you use Acumen, and Acumen has its own system, right? Because it's not going to be using TELUS. There's an option there. Okay. Could the fiscal agent, whoever that is, could they decide to use facial recognition or tracking?
We would have to have that conversation with Acumen or any of the fiscal intermediaries. There's more than Acumen out there.
Yes, of course.
To our knowledge, neither of those have been requested to be done, and we would not want either of those to be done. Certainly not tracking during the day or a facial recognition feature.
Okay, and I don't mean to single out Acumen, but none of the other fiscal intermediaries, all of them in the group, could not just say, oh, by the way, we require you to do this, even though the state is saying it's not necessary.
Well, they work under contract to the Department of Behavioral Health and the Department of Community Health. So we set the rules by which they operate with. It's part of our contract for them being essentially employees of the state of Georgia. They're not employees like I'm an employee, but they're a contractor with the state of Georgia. So we would certainly have the authority to say, hey, that's not part of something that's in our provider agreement.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. All right, so here's some of the very specific questions. What alternatives are there for EVV if a caretaker isn't computer minded and house has and the house has inadequate internet service?
Well, the good thing, let me just say this, we will be strongly encouraging the web app on a phone or an iPad. And the reason we're going to strongly encourage that is because of the functionality you get from it. You get to be able to see when your workers are late. You get to see where your workers are when they clock in or when they clock out. You get to see missed appointments. You get to really get the full gamut of things. You get to list out the services that were done electronically in signatures, or, it doesn't always have to be a signature too. I understand that's a question that's come in. There are administrative ways to get around that if it's necessary. But all those things are available on the app. We are also looking at the availability of an IVR if you have a hard phone line and you need to use that. That was in part of our contract with Acumen and TELUS. And unlike other states, most states, and I'll just be honest with you, I've talked to virtually all the states and Guam at this point about EVV. And most of the states are just mandating the app. They're not really giving too many other options. It's a fair amount are doing an IVR too, so which is just that phone. It's just that phone you call in on. There's a fair amount that are doing that. But we in this state will also be doing an option of a fixed device. So if you have last resort, that there is no other way for the person to get the app, you can request that we authorize a fixed device, which is just like a key fob which you might start your car with, that goes into the person's house to check in and check out. As far as internet connectivity, that's not a problem. These systems are set up to store the information when you check in, and then when you do hit internet connectivity, to send and transmit the information at that time.
Okay, so that's good. So again, what is IVR? You mentioned that.
It's voice recognition.
Okay.
It's the voice. I can't remember what the I is for, but it's voice recognition. So it's just a way of calling in and checking out.
Okay. So you just talked about what devices can be used besides an employee's phone. You talked about the possibility of a fob if needed, and an actual phone. Will web entry on a desktop that's not in real time be an acceptable option for EVV?
The Cures Act requires that check-in and check-out is captured at the time of check-in and check-out. Okay. Now, so as far as doing it at a later time and just doing it administratively, no, we won't be allowing that because it doesn't conform to the 21st Century Cures Act, and then we would have to pay the penalty. Now, having said that, I used to work at a record store growing up, right? That's where I worked. For the people who grew up in this area, I worked at Coconuts and Peaches and Tape World and Record Town, which were all music stores around here. And I was forgetful about clocking in sometime, to the point where at one point I got like a reprimand letter from my boss at work that was like, you need to remember to clock in, because when I didn't clock in, he had to administratively do stuff to correct that error, right? And we will certainly have that same capacity here. Sometimes people just forget stuff, you forget to clock in or clock out. So in those instances, we absolutely will have a way to administratively make those corrections.
Okay, great. So, all right, we've talked about no tracking mechanism at all. So we've laid that to rest. What if equipment that's used is damaged or lost? Are there state funds to pay for backup equipment?
So when it comes to the individual fobs, yes, there is. But we as a state are not purchasing phones for workers. I don't know really any state that is. That is not something that we are doing as part of EVV. So the anticipation is that workers will use their phones. And in the instance where they don't have phones, then they can request an exception for the fixed device.
Okay. So,
I think as an employer, you will find, and as a member, you will find, it helps you if your employees use that login and log out. And let me just go over one thing that I've heard and gotten, because I man the EVV mailbox, so I've probably answered 1,000 questions over the last couple of years. I've I get questions about data. That's like, wait a minute. So when they're signing in and signing out, that's using data. We've looked at the amount of data that would be in a week for multiple clock in and clock outs. It is completely insignificant. It is like not enough to even make a register on someone's plan.
Okay.
Because that's how little we're tracking. That's how little information is going back and forth. It is really a snapshot moment in time at clock in and clock out, and that is it.
That's it. Okay. So you just mentioned an EVV mailbox and that you man that, and I will go ahead and somehow include that address when I post this interview. Yeah.
Great. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to encourage people, if they want individual responses to any question on their own, feel free to use that mailbox. As of this morning, I was caught up. There were no outstanding emails. There may be some in there now, but as of this morning, I was completely caught up.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you for that. So again, getting back to personal care services right now, that is what's required under the CARES Act, that it be EVV compliant. So again, could a fiscal agent require that all services be EVV compliant, even though the state is only requiring personal care services, so CLS for those of us that have the now and comp?
We are only requiring CLS. Now, I mean, I understand that Acumen and the fiscal agents have to have a way to collect their data, but as far as EVV goes, at this point in the now and comp waivers, we are only requiring CLS.
Okay. Okay. So, and if someone does self-direct, is there ability to bill the waiver? Say they want to purchase a tablet and just have it in their home. Is there a way to bill the waiver for that at this time? I think you answered this before, but I just wanted to make it clear.
No, there is not.
Okay.
I'm thinking about the now and comp renewal. I don't think it's in there either. The assisted technology that folks are introducing is more for like voice recognition for certain things, or flashing lights, or for if you have an emergency response system.
Okay.
The tricky part about stuff like iPads and phones is the federal government does not consider durable medical equipment or technology something that can be otherwise used by the average person. It has to be something that's very, very specific to an individual's disability. So you can't just say your cell phone, because somebody else could pick up that cell phone and use it for their normal day.
True.
And that's really what the definition on the federal level is.
Okay. On the webinar, I heard you talking about training. So who will provide the training to families and to providers? Is that DCH? Is it the vendor? Is the fiscal agent?
We're going to be doing it at DCH in collaboration with DBHTD. We're letting them know about it and telling them everything about it. But a lot of the training is actually going to come from TELUS and Conduit. TELUS is the people who make the EVV solution. Conduit is their management company. They're the people who do project management for them and do contracting and all that other extra work. But they have, and both of them have a really, really good and effective training team. I think you heard from Chris in one webinar and Orlando in another webinar. One was from Conduit and one was from TELUS. And they are pros at this. They have done it in other states, many other states. They even have one of their systems going through certification with the federal government right now. And I want to assure people that there will be multiple trainings. I think I said this on one of the webinars too. I think I got 11 or 12 training decks that I need to review yet from TELUS and Conduit. And they go over everything, like scheduling is a separate training and webinar. Claims resolution, like we were just talking about when your person forgets to clock in and clock out, that's a separate webinar. There will absolutely positively be specific targeted trainings and webinars for participant or consumer directed families and individuals. So we are doing very specific targeted training to that population because we recognize that it's a unique circumstance with a fiscal intermediary.
Correct. Absolutely. I think that's all for EVV. Is there anything else? I think you've really gone over all of the high points. And so we'll be looking for those trainings, and those are going to start in the next couple of months.
Yeah, we should have additional trainings that start in December. We just got through our introductory ones. The next one are going to be really a more deeper dive into the app. What people really want to see, people are tired of hearing from me. They want to see what that app looks like and what you can do with that app. So that's the next scheduled book of trainings.
Okay.